We have one more week till the new mini set comes out, but until then, here's what the best Hearthstone decks are right now. In this video I will give you 5 of the best Hearthstone decks, show you its mulligans, win rates, and also some general tips with them, so you know how to play better with and against them. But I'll also show you all of the other working archetypes for each individual class, so stick around to the end. If you're serious about Hearthstone, drop a like and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget you can hire me for some Hearthstone coaching. Now, let's check out the decks.
You are not prepared!
The new mini set will be launching on May 31st, but traditionally speaking, mini sets don't really shake up the meta too hard, so it's probably not the worst idea for you to be crafting new decks if you still don't have something cool to play with. The first deck on the list obviously has to be Frost Death Knight, because it has absolutely been crushing it after the latest set of nerfs. This is my personal favorite list, and I have been using it for quite a while, and I've helped so many people reach Legend with it, so you won't go wrong with this one. The main difference from the other ones is we're running one Harbinger of Winter, so we can have a little bit more reliable Frost spell draw, and we also have a couple of Rowdy fans, which are extremely good in hitting the opponent for the face, so you can get that extra chip damage. Also, the two Might of Manyfields are extremely powerful, because not only do they board lock the opponent, they also are basically 8 damage on a stick each. And we also have one Posikin here, which is just an all-around great card from Diamond to Legend, because people really don't know how to play around it. Other than that, the list is basically the same as the others, and you basically want to tempo out in the early turns and chip the opponent down, and in the mid-game you start freeze-locking them, and killing them from hand, basically. You can check out some of my detailed guides and coaching sessions with this deck, so you know how to play better with and against it. Matchup-wise, here's what the stats show, and you're gonna notice you don't really have any bad matchups, but Blood DK definitely tends to be one of the harder ones, and you really need to push the deck to the max there. Face Hunter, I haven't really lost to any Face Hunters so far, but some awkward, random BS mages can definitely be awkward from time to time, and sometimes even pure paladins might get the better of you. Honestly, the hardest matchup for this deck would be the Mirror Frost DK matchup when you're going second, because it's just so much harder to actually win from second there. For the mulligan, here's what the stats show, and you obviously are gonna want your good 1-drops with Arms Dealer and Foul Leg being your top picks, but if you already have one of these, you can also consider keeping a Skeletal Sidekick. Bonebreaker is also amazing, Harbinger is also never hurting a keep, and if you already have a good curve going, Pozic or Tessarian might also be good keeps. Fallen Baron might also make the cut, and same goes for Vizier, but try to be curving into those. The rest probably not a great idea though. I would only keep Rowdy Fan if I already have an egg, so it's not always a dump. And when on the coin the situation is very similar, but here you could even think about things like Frost Strike, but as you can see, Tessarian and Fallen Baron become a little less keepable, which is kinda weird, and same goes for Harbinger, which really sounds wrong, but this is what the stats show. And on the number 2 spot, we also obviously still have Unholy Death Knight, because it was just that strong of a deck, and 2 nerfs didn't really change all that much for it. The list remains basically unchanged, but you can definitely opt for the Murloc variant as well, which is doing just as good. Again, you can check out my guide about this variant so you know better how to play with it, but obviously you want to be curving out well with your early game, build some sticky boards with the help of Hawkstrider Rancher, preferably followed up by a Nerubian Swarmguard, and after that Grave Strength usually takes the cake. But if that's not enough, you also have Sylvanas for huge swings, and Lord Marigar is your last ditch resort, which usually does convince the enemy to check for bottom right. Matchup-wise, Priests are not gonna be fun, as well as Blood Death Knights, but everything else looks pretty doable. So again, climbing is not an issue with this one. For the mulligan, here's what the stats show going first, and again, Arms Dealer, Body Bagger, and Skeletal Sidekick would be great, but obviously don't keep only 1-drops. Hawkstrider Rancher can be excellent, especially if you already have a good 1-drop. Pozic also makes a lot of sense. Sylvanas, I would only keep it against particular matchups where you are expecting something large for you to actually swing onto. Blightfang can make the cut, even though as a 4-drop is a little bit more chunky now, so probably less than great, but let's say against Paladins, even though that's a free matchup for you anyway, Blightfang can make the cut. Nerubian Vizier can also make the cut, as well as Vicro Necrolite. You're gonna notice that actually Battlefiend Necromancer is a lot lower on the keep list now, at least according to the win rate, people are still keeping it left and right. But yeah, against things like Shadow Priest or Demon Hunter, Battlefiend Necromancer is not as amazing because it's so easy to clear nowadays sitting at 2 health. And when on the coin, even Marigar becomes a lot more keepable here, and same goes for Sylvanas. But again, they're not very often kept, so you are required to somewhat curve into it. Bodybagger and Hawkstrider are still amazing, Tour Guide also makes sense, and Necromancer is even better here. Things like Plague Strike and even School Teacher can get kept here as well, but as you can see, Arms Dealer is not as amazing going second, especially if you're expecting a good answer for it from the opponent. For other good Death Knight decks, we have plenty of different variations of Frost Death Knight first, then some from Unholy, and we will have to move to page number 2 in order to actually see some good Blood Death Knight list as well, but those are still working pretty decent too. But yeah, these 3 archetypes would be the way to go for DK right now. On the number 3 spot, we also have Pure Pally, and this list actually has plenty more tribes than the one I usually showed you. We have Leviathan in here, as well as Funkfin, so that adds a Murloc and a mech to your pool for your curator, but we obviously also have the traditional good 1-drops in here, including Blood Matriarch Liadrin for some great Rush Divine Shield shenanigans. The weapon is insanely strong, and that is how you actually win against control matchups nowadays, building a very big weapon, and then as soon as the opponent cannot handle your entire board, you swing and you attack them for +20/+20 or more. We have all the good buffs in here with 4 Kill to Loss, Hand of Adal, and Seal of Blood. Boogie Down pulls you out some good 1-drops. You have Katori so you can repeat all the good buffs. Funkfin is super powerful because you have plenty of good Divine Shields to actually get buffs on, and with Mugborn Servant you can actually get some good creative answers for different situations. Like I said, Curator pulls you plenty stuff including Undeads, Murloc, Dragon, Mech, and Elemental/Beast. Anachronos can be super powerful because he can get rid of some very sticky boards, and on next turn you could actually take a win like that. The Countess is obviously also super important in here, and she can give you some very creative lethal outs from hand. Leviathan is also pretty nice because it's a very good sticky minion that also draws you cards. Light Rays come down for 0 mana, and we also have the Garden's Grace, which is basically a +10/+10 for 0 mana, and that combines especially well with your Disco Mole, and again that would be great for control decks because it's a lot harder to actually win if you don't have these buffs. Matchup wise, for the last 30 days this is what the stats show, and Spell Demon Hunters know more to ignore this, but Unholy Death Knight is definitely your hardest matchup in the current meta. Frost DK and Spooky Mage is also close to 50/50, but everything else is good. And for the mulligan going first, Curator I would only keep if I already have a good hand, like at least a 1-drop and maybe even a weapon, or at least Boogie Down. The 1-drops are also amazing, but Righteous Protector is not something you often keep too much of, because you would much rather have one of the other better 1-drops. Boogie Down is great. Mugborn Servant can also make the cut, but again try to be curving into it. If you already have a good sticky minion like let's say Righteous Protector or Sanguine Soldier, you could also consider Hand of Adal or even 4 Kill to Loss against some classes, and even Seal of Blood might make the cut, again if you have good early game minions. One on the coin however, here's what the stats show, and it's basically the same, but even Blood Matriarch Liadrin and Class Action Lawyer might make the cut here. Same goes for Katori, but it depends on the matchup. For other good Paladin decks, it's basically just iterations of this Pure Pally, but we also have Mech Pally doing some decent stuff, but stay away from things like Dancing Pally. Dragon Pally is also a thing, but it's basically again a Pure Pally with less stats. On the number 4 spot we actually have Burn Mage, which is an absolutely disgusting deck to be playing against because it basically stalls out games forever and then just kills you from hand, which is super not fun and not interactive. If you're on the receiving end at least. The deck is not super simple, but it's far from the hardest, so you can check out my detailed guide about this deck, so you know how to play better with and against it. The gist of it is, in the early turns you try not to fall behind too much, and you can definitely be using your burn spells, like Arcane Bolt and Infuse Frozen Touches to clear the board, so you can actually reach your late game and usually finish the opponent from hand with the help of Aegwynn or Vexalis. But honestly, if you're not against hard control decks, you don't even need those most of the time, and you can just dish out tons of damage, just because you get tons of copies of those damaging spells with the help of Volume Up, and also Deathborn can be super good. Commander Sivara also gives you plenty copies, and you can discover all sorts of nasty things from your Prismatic Elemental, Infinitize the Maxitude, and Suspicious Alchemist. Arcane Artificer plus Solid Alibi help you postpone the game longer, and Cold Case is also super good, so it gives you a ton of armor. Cosmic Keyboard is also pretty important, and that way, while you do your spell shenanigans, you also actually put large bodies on the board, so this combines especially well with Cold Case and Deathborn, and it also gives you the freedom to feel good about playing Volume Up and nothing else on a turn, while you still get a 4/4 on the board like that. Matchup wise, here's what the stats show, and apparently Face Hunter would be your hardest matchup, and same goes for Totem Shaman Shaman, and maybe Enraged Warrior, but everything else looks pretty good. Not sure why this Bird Mage is supposed to be so much better than yours, but yeah, it's kinda weird. Anyway, for the mulligan, here's what it is going first, and you're always gonna want your Cosmic Keyboard. Suspicious Alchemist is also great going first, and apparently Volume Up and Cold Case might also make the cut, especially if you already have Cosmic Keyboard, I'm assuming. Egwin can also be interesting against particular matchups, I guess, and I wouldn't say no to either Prismatic Elemental or Arcane Worm. Location is also insanely good, and if you're against a control deck, even Infinitize the Maxitude can also be good. And when going second, the situation is similar, but even Devborn becomes a lot more keepable, as well as your Commander Sivara. The rest looks the same though. Other mage lists right now would be the Spooky Mage, which is a bit more control-y, and it's also running things like Grand Magister Romath, and apparently the Nafrius nowadays too, which is interesting. Naga Mage is also not doing all that great, and Mech Mage is just above 50, so there's that. And on the last spot, we obviously also have Undead Priest, which is also still doing very well. And it's one of my favorite decks to coach to Legend too, for good reason. Games are pretty quick, the deck is not that complicated, and all around you should be having a good climb with it. Right now, the only changes you could be doing to the list would be in this area, and you either go with 2 Amalgams, 2 Boneflingers, or 1 of each. But you could also consider including a Pozic in this one instead of one of these two. Supposedly Boneflingers are a bit better than the Amalgam variant, but they both have their good pros and cons, so the choice is yours. Again, check out my guide about this deck so you know how to play better with it. But for the matchups, here's what the stats show. Again, Spell DH is not something you should worry about, but Frost DK and Unholy DK might be a little bit on the losing end. Pure Pally is usually not a hard matchup for me, but this is what the stats show, and same goes for Totem Shaman, which is not at all that bad. Blood Death Knights and Control Priests should be in your favor, as long as you don't overextend too much. And for the mulligan, here's what it looks like going first. Location is always gonna be great, your 1-drops are also insane, Shadow Ascendant, and if you already have a couple of good 1-drops, you might even consider Undying Allies, even though when going first, it's a little bit risky. Even High Cultist seems to be decently high on the list, but I would only keep this if I already have a really good turn 1 and 2. And when on the coin, Undying Allies becomes even more keepable. I have absolutely no idea what the fuck's going on here, but obviously 0.5% of people know something we don't. But yeah, never keep Dark Benedictus. And even Shadow Word Undead becomes a bit more keepable here. Honestly, even High Cultist would be something I would consider keeping if I already have a good curve, but don't keep it unless you already have the good curve, like I said. For other good priest decks, we also have Thief Priest and Control Priest doing pretty well, but the games with those are a lot slower, and the win rate is not as good as the Shadow Priest. But if you are itching to play Control, these are definitely very good variations. And for the classes we didn't mention, starting off with Demon Hunter, Relic Demon Hunter is actually doing very well, and there is this new variant, which is looking very interesting, and I will be giving you a video about it really soon. Big Demon Hunter is still pretty strong, and also Outcast Demon Hunter is a very good deck if you're in for a challenge. The rest is variations of those 3, however, and Spell DH is nowhere to be seen anymore. For Druid, Big Druid would be your best bet, but the stats for it are not that high, and the sample size is not high either, so keep that in mind. With Hunter, Face Hunter definitely could have made it into this list, but you can just check out my Face Hunter guide so you know how to play with and against this deck better. Hybrid Hunter is also above 50%, but not by much. For Rogue, Miracle Rogue is still your best bet, but there's also this new Dagger Rogue that's actually having decent results now. But if you're going for the high ranks, Miracle Rogue would be the way to go for sure. With Shamans you only have Totem Shaman to rely on, and Big Shaman looks like it's in the negative, so stay away from that. With Warlock, Fatigue Warlock actually has some pretty good stats it seems, even though the sample size is low, and I don't really believe it's actually that good, but it's definitely playable, so you got that going for you. Thaddeus Warlock is also pretty decent right now, even though I just still feel it's a gimmicky deck that tries to cheese the opponent, and if you don't have the card draw you basically lose, and there's nothing you can do about it. And for Warrior, Manage Area Warrior is actually at the top right now, and Enraged Warrior is also out there with pretty decent results and sample size. Rift Warrior is dead on 50, but most of his variations are actually even under, so it's not that amazing still. So that's gonna be it for this top 5, guys. Hope this helps you figure out what you want to be playing in the last week of this meta. If you're serious about Hearthstone, drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. I'm Kris05, and I'll see you in my next video or stream.